Today, I do not have power. I'm having to run off of my laptop here. Thank goodness for this Ugreen power bank. I told you that thing is going to come in handy, and it already is. I'm having to power the lights with this really cool power station back here. It's becoming sort of a hot box in here, so please bear with me if I'm sweating, but there's some really awesome news that I just had to go over, starting with the fact that AMD is planning another epic gaming CPU and massive leaks on Nvidia's RTX 5090 and 5080. I'm talking specs, just tons of stuff here, so let's get right to it. Welcome everyone to Gamer Meld. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, if you saw one of my recent videos, you know that I discussed the fact that AMD is set to release their Ryzen 9000 X3D chips pretty soon. More specifically, the 9800 X3D first, then the other ones later, and basically what those were the 9800 X3D, 9900 X3D, and 9950 X3D. Well, according to a new leak from this well-known leaker on Twitter, well, actually, first up, I will first say that he is claiming that the launch of the 9800 X3D is actually coming in early November, while the last leak we had heard it was late October. Maybe the October is just the announcement with the release in November, or maybe it just moved back a few days. I'm really not sure, but either way, early November, late October, basically a few weeks away. But the big thing here is that he also states one more thing: R5 is also coming. This was also planned to go along with the R7 and R9, meaning Ryzen 5 9600 X3D. Now, that isn't too much of a surprise given the fact that AMD just released their 7600 X3D, though the number one issue with both the 5600 X3D and 7600 X3D is the fact that they're limited releases. Hopefully AMD will eventually release the 7600 X3D all over. I definitely have my fingers crossed there. You know how much I like this CPU. Simply put, it's able, while it isn't able to get up to the 7800 X3D's performance, it's right up in there, and it's at least as good or potentially even faster than the 14900K, yet it's significantly cheaper. Of course, it's only faster in gaming, keep that in mind, but regardless, still a fantastic chip, especially for gamers. So if AMD is in fact releasing this, that's going to be awesome. Hopefully they release it to everyone, and at least according to this, it sounds like they may in fact release it fairly soon. Of course, we know the 9800 X3D is releasing first, and there isn't anything definitive from him saying, okay, it's definitely releasing right alongside them, but it's just the fact that this was planned from the beginning, at least according to this. Ultimately, I am pumped for this new gaming CPU. And next up for today, yes, huge news. Like I said, we actually finally have specs. We have a ton more stuff. There's multiple things I need to go over with this, but starting things off, we have the full specs for Nvidia's upcoming RTX 5090 and 5080. And this comes from resident leaker Kopite7 Kimmy. Of course, he was extremely accurate with leaks for the 4000 series GPUs before those were released. He's been incredibly accurate in the past, so this is probably about as close as it gets before we actually get the announcement. Either way, starting things off, as you can see right here with the 5090, this bad boy is built on the GB202-300 GPU, and it comes with a whopping, at least according to this, with a whopping 21,760 CUDA cores. That is a very impressive 32, right at 33% increase over the current RTX 4090. Not only that, but if you saw earlier rumors when we were discussing this, at first, I believe it was actually Kopite7 Kimmy that initially released it, though with that said, this is actually stuff where it's actually apparently been finalized from Nvidia. They are getting very close to finalization, and this should be it. So obviously, when he announced that before, that it was going to have specifically, that was going to have a 512-bit memory bus, obviously that was probably just Nvidia discussing the possibilities of that, because later on it seemed like, oh, that may not be the case. It would actually be 448-bit. Well, it looks like Kopite7 Kimmy was right all along, in that, according to this, it is still a 512-bit memory bus, which means it comes with 32 gigabytes of memory, and not just any memory, but GDDR7. So we are looking at a whopping 32% more cores versus the 4090, also more memory, faster memory, and probably the one thing that we don't have is clock speeds, but assuming the clocks are even a little bit faster, this GPU could be a serious boost versus the RTX 4090. With that said, unfortunately, it also looks like it's also going to be a serious boost when it comes to wattage. As you can see right here, it is in fact rated for 600 watts. You can see it down here. Now, we don't know for sure if this is TBP or TGP or TDP or what, but it's definitely looking like it's going to be more wattage than the 4090. And of course, that's not too much of a surprise given I recently went over this right here where they had actually discussed, Tweaktown had actually discussed the upcoming PSU with MSI, and you can see that that PSU actually had two 12V 2x6 power connectors, and MSI's reasoning was to support the next generation of graphics. So understandably, they extrapolated this to basically mean, okay, there's going to be two of these here, and that's for next gen, so the 5090 probably requires two. Well, it looks like that's sort of true maybe, but maybe not, because we also have a new leak from Computer Base where, according to them, both the 5090 and 5080 are only going to come with a single 12V 2x6 connector, albeit they're probably referring to the Founders Edition here, so third-party cards will potentially come with two, and that actually does make sense, especially if it does pull anywhere near 600 watts, just because the 12V 2x6 connector can only give a maximum of 600 watts. Now, the PCI Express slot does give a little bit, but obviously if you do any kind of wild overclocking, you're likely gonna need two. But at least according to this, likely the Founders Edition is only gonna come with one. Moving on, we have the RTX 5080. And according to this, you can see it, this is based on the GB203-400 GPU, and it comes with 10,752 cores. Now, you're probably going to notice, if you look at the 5090 versus the 5080, it's looking like Nvidia is set to do exactly what they did with the 4000 series, with there being a giant gap between the absolute best 90 series and the next best 80 series. Now, with that said, I actually have a little bit more information on this in a few. There hopefully will be something in between that, but I'll get to that in just a minute. And this one comes with 256-bit GDDR7, and once again, cut in half from 32 gigabytes down to 16. That one, I have to say, is seriously a bummer if you ask me. I mean, even current gen AMD cards have more than that, yet are way slower than the 5080, more than likely. So that definitely is a bummer. But not only that, it still draws quite a bit of power at 400 watts. And we're still not done here, because there is yet more information, because, well, there's quite a few things here. For starters, apparently, according to multiple leaks here, we're talking about leaks from Binge Life and The Verge, tons of stuff is coming out, I really do have to say that. But first up, as you can see, the 50 series will finally move to the 5.0, so this is the PCI Express 5.0 interface. Obviously, the current gen cards are based on PCI Express 4.0, so these new cards will be changing that. Not only that, but this is a big one, especially given how powerful the RTX 5090 is set to be, but these bad boys are apparently coming with DisplayPort 2.1a with the full HBR20 support. And that HBR20 support is very important because it gives it quite a bit more bandwidth, unlike Intel's Battlemage, which is rumored to come with UHBR 13.5. Basically, this means that you're going to be able to get up to some wild frame rates at 4K, then even do 8K, all that good stuff. Really good news here. And moving on to The Verge, as far as release, according to them, you can see while the specs of those may have leaked already, dates for when we'll be seeing the cards have not been shared. According to The Verge, I understand from one source familiar with Nvidia's plan that we might hear more about the RTX 50 series at the Consumer Electronics Show in early 2025. And of course, the 2025 CES is going to be held early January, so not too far along, but they're also saying we might hear more. So this isn't even necessarily a release, but at least what it sounds like from this, we're almost certainly not going to see them any sooner. And lastly, when it comes to these leaks, like I said, you saw this giant discrepancy between the RTX 5090 and 5080, but according to a leaker on the Chip Hell forums, the 5080 will not just be released with 16 gigabytes, but they're also planning to release a 24 gigabyte version later. So yeah, hopefully they will have something like that so you can at least get fairly close to the 5080 without shelling out who knows how much money this thing's going to cost. I mean, don't forget that at least when the 4090 came out, Nvidia wasn't 100% sure whether AMD would be able to compete with it or not, but I'm sure that they've seen all the rumors as well as the discussion with AMD, the recent interview with AMD, where it seemed like they all but admitted that they aren't releasing high-end cards. So with that information, they know that they can probably price the 5090 at just about anything. And once again, this is why competition is incredibly important. So while that does it for today, are you pumped for Nvidia's next-gen RTX 5000 series? And which GPU, if you are pumped, are you planning to get? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And as always, have a great day.